There was a time when a 10-year-old boy could butcher a hog, read a storm coming off the color of the sky, and fix a broken plow with nothing but wire and patience. He didn't learn it in a classroom. He learned it because his life depended on it. Today, most grown adults couldn't do half of what these kids did before breakfast. Somewhere between the tractor and the television, we lost an entire library of knowledge, and almost nobody wrote it down. Here are 15 skills that used to be as common as tying your shoes and why they quietly disappeared. Before the interstate system connected every town, before rural electrification reached the back roads, farm life ran on self-reliance. A family couldn't call a repairman. There wasn't a store 20 minutes away. If something broke, you fixed it. If you were hungry, you grew it, raised it, or caught it. And the person who learned these lessons fastest usually wasn't the father. It was the 8 or 9-year-old kid trailing behind him, handed a tool and told to watch. By the time that kid turned 14, he could run half a farm alone. That's not an exaggeration. It's in the 4-H record books, old agricultural extension pamphlets, and the memories of people who are still alive today to tell you about it. Let's go through what they actually knew. Long before phone apps, farm kids read the sky like a second language. A ring around the moon meant rain in a day or two. Cows lying down in a field meant a storm was building pressure. The direction smoke drifted from the chimney told you which way the wind was shifting and which way trouble was coming from. Why it vanished. The weather radio, then the smartphone, made the sky obsolete as an instrument. Every farm had a well, and every well had a pump that needed priming. A cup of water poured down the top to create suction before you could draw more. Miss the technique, and you'd stand there working the handle for nothing. Kids learned it before they learned long division. Why it vanished. Indoor plumbing and electric pumps arrived town by town through the 1950s and 60s. Come fall, hog killing day was a whole family event. Kids as young as 10 helped scald, scrape, and cut. Nothing was wasted. Even the fat was rendered into lard, the intestines cleaned for sausage casing. A child who'd done it twice could tell you exactly where each cut came from on the animal. Why it vanished? Grocery store refrigeration and packaged meat removed the need entirely by the 1960s. A dull blade was dangerous and useless. Boys learned to run a whetstone along an edge at the correct angle by feel, often before they were trusted to swing the tool itself. You could tell a well-kept blade by the sound it made cutting grass. A clean hiss, not a tear. Why it vanished. Gas-powered mowers and store-bought tools made hand sharpening a specialty skill instead of daily necessity. Twice a day, every day, rain or shine. There was no day off from a cow that needed milking. Kids learned the rhythm early, steady pressure, alternating hands, keeping the cow calm. Get it wrong, and you'd spend twice as long for half the milk. Why it vanished. Mechanized milking and the consolidation of dairy farming after Woodworking. Nothing got thrown away because it had a hole in it. Girls and boys both were taught basic mending, a darning egg, needle and thread, patching a knee before it tore further. A family might buy new clothes once a year, if that. Why it vanished. Cheap mass-produced clothing after the 1960s made mending less economical than replacing. Flint and steel, or a bow drill in a pinch. Kids on more remote farms learned fire starting as backup in case matches ran out or got wet. More common, knowing how to keep a fire going efficiently. banking coals overnight so you didn't have to start from scratch each morning. Why it vanished. Reliable matches, then gas and electric stoves, made the skill decorative rather than essential. Long before GPS, kids learned to navigate home across fields by landmarks. A particular fence line, the angle of the sun, moss growth on a tree trunk. Getting lost on your own family's land was a real embarrassing possibility if you hadn't learned to read it properly. Why it vanished. Cars, paved roads, and eventually GPS replaced land literacy with map literacy, then no literacy at all. Come late summer, kitchens turned into small factories. Kids helped snap beans, peel peaches, and pack jars for the boiling water bath that would seal them for winter. A cellar with 200 jars lined up meant a family would eat through February without worry why it vanished. Supermarkets with year-round produce made home canning a hobby instead of survival. A pocket knife wasn't a toy. It was a tool every boy carried and was expected to know how to use safely by age 8 or 9. Whittling started as entertainment but quickly became practical, fixing a broken tool handle, carving a peg, shaping a simple toy for a younger sibling. Why it vanished. Cheap plastic goods and stricter school knife policies phased it out by the 1970s and 80s. Before every farm had a tractor, the workday started with harnessing the team, a process with a dozen steps that had to be done in the right order, correctly, or risk an injured animal or a runaway. Kids as young as 10 could harness, hitch, and drive a team solo. Why it vanished. Tractor adoption accelerated hard after W4, and horse team knowledge became a niche skill within a generation. Lye rendered animal fat and patience. That's all it took. It was smelly, slow work, usually done once or twice a year in a big batch. Kids stirred the pot for hours while learning exactly how much lye turned fat into something you could actually wash with versus something that would burn your skin. Why it vanished. Cheap commercial soap and detergent became widely available and inexpensive by the mid-20th century. A kid working the farm learned to tell just from posture and sound whether a hen was about to lay, whether a cow was sick, or whether a spooked horse was about to bolt. This wasn't taught in a lesson. It came from thousands of hours of quiet observation. Why it vanished. The shrinking number of family farms means fewer kids grow up around livestock at all. There's a right way to split a log, following the grain, not fighting it, and a right way to stack it so it dries instead of rots. Get the stack wrong, and you'd be burning wet wood all winter, choking the house with smoke instead of heat. Why it vanished. Central heating with oil, gas, and electricity reached most American homes by the 1960s. Farm kids learned to read the length of shadows to estimate the hour, and the position of certain stars or the blooming of certain plants to know when to plant, when to harvest, and when the first frost was coming. It was knowledge passed down, refined over generations of trial and error on that same patch of land. Why it vanished. Mass communication and standardized scheduling replaced local, generational knowledge with universal clocks and calendars. So what actually happened? It wasn't one single moment. It was 3 decades of quiet change stacking on top of each other. The tractor replaced the horse team. The grid replaced the well. The grocery store replaced the root cellar. Each change on its own made life easier. But together, they replaced something else too, a kind of knowledge that only gets passed down hand to hand, generation to generation, and disappears completely if the chain breaks even once. That chain broke for most American families sometime between 1950 and 1975. And once it broke, there was no getting it back from a book, because half of it was never written down in the first place. If your grandfather or great-grandmother grew up on a farm, there's a good chance they knew every single thing on this list, and probably a dozen more we didn't have time for. Most of that knowledge lives only in memory now, and memory doesn't last forever. If this brought back a story or something your own family taught you, tell it in the comments below. And if you want to keep this kind of history alive, subscribe, because next time we're going back to the one-room schoolhouse and what kids actually had to know to pass the 8th grade in 1955. You might be surprised how hard it really was.